Today I'm covering Call of Juarez Gunslinger, a game developed by Techland and published by Ubisoft in 2013. It's the fourth Call of Juarez game, although it is a standalone plot-wise. This is another game with an initial digital-only release. Gunslinger was actually Ubisoft's second highest digital seller of the year, behind Far Cry Blood Dragon, which was a hell of a game. It's strange to remember there was a time that Ubisoft was regularly releasing games I was personally excited for. Gunslinger is a first-person shooter with a really interesting story framework. It's a tall tale. A fabled gunslinger, Silas Greaves, walks into a bar and starts regaling the customers with a long life spent chasing revenge for the death of his brothers, crossing guns with every famous desperado from Billy the Kid to Butch Cassidy. This is the skeleton of the entire story. Sometimes he misremembers and hastily edits his tale, or we see what the regulars claim happened before Silas sets him straight. According to him, he's killed dozens, hundreds, thousands of men, and been misidentified as someone else for almost all of them. So what does this game do differently that makes me remember it fondly over a decade later? Well, the gunplay is pretty nice, but I don't think that's quite it. This feels like a spiritual sequel to Red Dead Revolver. Not Redemption or the more famous Big Brother with their 8 hours of cattle rousting, but the original. An arcadey, level-based shooter with slow-mo and big hordes of enemies. There's a limited selection of weapons. 2 shotguns, 3 revolvers, the lever-action rifle, and the sawed-off rifle, which seems to have been left in on accident. It's an Xbox 360 game, so naturally there's half a dozen turret sections thrown in there too. Luckily enough, no helicopter rides. But there is a satisfying meta layer over the gunplay, a skill tree that gives us actually fun quirks to our abilities, like dual-wielding pistols or auto-reloading certain weapons during slow-mo, or an ability that lets us dodge a fatal shot and immediately execute the shooter. Things that do actually affect the way you interact with the game world instead of simple plus percentage feats. And on top of that, a score system tied primarily with time to kill. Keep killing enemies faster than 4 seconds apart, and your multiplier goes up, you gain more experience, and unlock more neat abilities or +1 guns. Although the gunplay in the story mode can have a few repetitive moments, running through the arcade mode where the game gives you a short 4 or 5 minute mission and tells you to kill everyone as fast as you possibly can, that was a real barn burner. This is probably one of the most fun 100% achievement runs I've done this year. Other than the standard shooting, as Silas tells his story, he frequently comes face to face with outlaw legends. And it wouldn't be right and proper to just gun them down willy-nilly like everyone else, nah. This is a game that understands timing and panache. Enter the dueling feature. This is a somewhat controversial feature, largely because the game doesn't do a great job of explaining it, and it's kind of hard to parse what you're even looking for until you've died about a dozen times. There's essentially 2 parts to the duels. Time to draw, which we increase by hovering our hand directly above the gun handle until Silas starts dropping his fingers closer, and also adjusting as his hand dithers left and right. And focus, which we increase by keeping a floaty, moving reticle over our enemy as they circle. The player needs to be micro-adjusting both of these to get the perfect draw. For me at least, it splits my attention and makes these sections really incredibly tense. My eyes flick between all these indicators, getting one adjustment just as the other starts to spiral out of control. At a certain point, your enemy stops, a heartbeat fades in, and then...
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid died there in that cemetery not 6 months ago.
Once they go for their gun, it's fair game. You can also draw first, if you don't mind having a yeller streak painted down your backside. But what really stood out, and what I think ultimately drew me back in, was the mine mission. For some reason, I fully remember every twist and turn of this mine mission 12 years later. It is a really great mission. Silas progresses through a gold mine overtaken by Henry Plummer's gang. stopping at one point and picking between two paths, through the mine or around the side. Instead of a simple button prompt, Silas just walks us through what would have happened if he tackled the mine head on. And then he admits it would have been a stupid plan. We rewind, and a ladder descends from heaven to show us how things really happened. There's something about the tall tale wraparound that makes this game just feel so much more realistic, because games are inherently unrealistic. This is a guy telling you he caught a 50-pound bass from a dribbling creek, that he caught a spark blazing down a fuse trail towards dynamite, that he's the man who really killed Butch Cassidy. With this framework, killing 100 men per level feels totally reasonable. He's bullshitting. The bar patrons push back here and there, objecting about how convenient some parts of his story are, or how there's no way he killed so-and-so in Kansas because they were found dead in Texas. And towards the end, when Silas is a few whiskeys deep, he starts wondering if this life of revenge has made him a bigger villain than the men he's chasing. Other than that, there's also a great deal of interactivity with the environments. If you're on a killing streak and want to keep it going without any enemies in sight, you can snipe a pumpkin or an explosive barrel to refresh that timer. There's plenty of bottles and loose boards to fly apart in a gunfight, and also some fun little environmental things you might not immediately notice but that really add to the immersion. Barrels springing leaks or sunlight spearing through bullet holes in the walls. As far as the downsides, well, the weapons aren't incredibly distinct. Being locked to a historical time frame isn't really an excuse here. There were certainly more types of guns around than the 3 near-identical revolvers and 2 long arms presented here, and some of the later level designs feel repetitive. The enemies don't really change as you progress, in tactics, armament, or even really in volume. Without any sort of escalation or evolution to the enemies, the campaign does end up feeling like running through the motions by the very end. I also ran into some issues with enemy AI misfiring, like the hide-and-seek boss fight, which is actually pretty fun when it works, but half the times I tried it, the boss just got stuck running, and I gunned him down. The graphics are also just okay. The cel-shaded designs do keep everything from feeling tremendously outdated, and it's not really the quality of textures that bugs me, but the actual character and costume designs here. All the costumes feel really cluttered and overdone, even for relatively basic enemies. Like everyone's carrying every belt and every buckle they've ever seen at all times. It does feel like they were just aping the visual style of Borderlands a little, but it doesn't quite work as well for me with this Western setting compared to a sci-fi Western setting. Overall, hey, I like it. It's very much of its time as a 360 era shooter, but the dual mechanics are still fresh today, and I appreciate that the skill leveling system actually has some compelling choices that can change your playstyle up. It's also got a few real slick moments that I still remember all these years later, and hey, at times it still made my heart race. On the trusty pain scale, I'd give this one a painless. It's a joy to play, and grabbing the 100% achievement on this was actually really delightful. The achievement for completing the duel mode honorably, all in a row, was incredibly tense given the increasing stakes and difficulty, and mastering the arcade mode was just good old-fashioned Twitch shooting fun. Well, that's all for my 47th review. I'm going to try to squeeze in one of those wildly acclaimed 2025 releases before the end of the year. I'm Jotun Warrior. Thanks for tuning in. See ya!